get started. Feel free to grab a seat and open your chip bag as we're getting started. It's great to see everyone today. My name's Leah Zickman. I'm the Executive Director here at the Hourglass. It's always so energizing to have all of you in the room. Our mission is to provide relevant, reliable information to the community, but we're also trying to make an effort to get people in the room together, get you all talking and making connections. I want to take some time to acknowledge that we have some new folks in the room. If this is your first Hourglass Forum, can you raise your hand? Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I know we have some folks from Quest. We have some folks from Next Generation Lancaster. So thank you all for being here and joining us today. Today's program offers an opportunity to learn more about the current priorities and initiatives guiding public safety efforts in Lancaster City. Mayor Danene Sorace has focused on 4 key priorities during her time as mayor: strong neighborhoods, safe spaces, sustainable economy, and sound government. A longtime advocate for equitable city services, Mayor Sorace has led the city of Lancaster with a focus on transparency, community well-being, and smart investments in infrastructure and public trust. Under her administration and in partnership with the Lancaster City Bureau of Police, we are addressing today the progress that has been made for our public safety operations. One of Mayor Sorace's key partners in this work is Chief Richard Mendez, who brings over 2 decades of law enforcement experience in his role as Chief of Police. Under his direction, the Bureau has adopted a renewed emphasis on community engagement, launched the police social worker program, and reimagined the officer recruitment process to better reflect the values and diversity of Lancaster community. This spring, those efforts reached a new milestone. On April 24th, the Bureau is officially recognized as accredited by the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission, a first for Lancaster City. This afternoon, you'll also hear from Grace Mentzer and Kelly Haines, the Bureau's dedicated police social workers. Grace brings a background in trauma-informed care and crisis intervention, while Kelly has extensive experience in mental health services and community outreach. Together, they serve as vital links between law enforcement and residents in need, helping to ensure that officers have the support needed to respond effectively and compassionately to complex calls for service. Together, these speakers will share updates on the Bureau's progress and how those efforts are shaping Lancaster's evolving approach to public safety. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers & Associates, for making these forums possible, Millersville University and the Ware Center for hosting us, Shoemaker for providing our live streaming services, and Caleb Bornman for providing our event photography. I will pass this off to Mayor Sorace, and thank you all again for being here today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. On this beautiful, warm June day, it feels nice to be warm after so much rain, but I am very, very happy that the river is higher than it once was, and that's like a whole other conversation about PFAS and testing of water supply and new regulations, and I don't know, we can come back to that someday. Today we're here to talk about public safety, and safety is foundational to everything that we do in the city of Lancaster. Without it, the vitality that we are now so accustomed to would wane, and we would not have had almost $1 billion of private investment during my time as mayor, $1 billion in the last 8 years, which is just incredible. And we would not be attracting thousands of people to our events, including this Saturday's Red Rose Run. Who's signed up for Red Rose Run? Tim, I knew it was going to be you. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. You will be one of about 1,200 runners that will be on the streets of the city of Lancaster. Celebrate is another one. The Mayor's Tree Lighting is another popular one. These events are part of our community vitality, and we sometimes take them for granted, but underscoring all of those events is public safety. So what I can say is that our city is safe, and the data tell the story. In 2024, we had the lowest homicide rate in the city of Lancaster since 1983, which is incredible. In recent years, we've had 100% or near 100% rate for clearance of homicides, which means we figure out who to charge and bring justice to that person or that victim's family. And our criminal investigative division investigates everything. And we sometimes take this for granted, so that if your package gets stolen off your front porch or your bike, we investigate. And that is not true in other communities in South Central Pennsylvania, and it's something that we should not take for granted. Sometimes it's those smaller petty crimes that they really affect the livability and vitality of our neighborhoods in ways that are very detrimental. And so the fact that we investigate every single one of them, I think, speaks volumes. The emphasis on public safety is also reflected in our budget. I've come here many times to talk about our budget, but it's just important to situate in the context of our general fund budget. 60% is dedicated to fire and police services. And you should also just know that the calls for service in the city of Lancaster have declined over time, and that they have stayed down, which reflects this combination of the kind of investment and connectedness in our community, as well as the impact of our proactive policing efforts. This trend, looking at this trend, was the impetus for us to complete a staffing study. That was last year, Chief? In which we were looking at our overall call volume and the number of patrol officers that we needed to have on the street. Well, just the overall number of police officers, period. And what we learned is that we moved our goalpost from 145 down to 128. And that reflects the changing needs around public safety in the city of Lancaster, and I think is a metric that speaks to the data that show that the city of Lancaster is safe. But even knowing that we need 100 and less officers, 128 versus 145, we need to hire a lot of police officers. We've leaned into recruitment in recent years. We've launched a much more intentional, targeted approach to finding quality candidates through digital outreach, recruitment events, training sessions, and an innovative approach to a physical agility testing, which you can see Officer Valverde on the right beginning that agility test. And so what we decided to do, really, the team decided that we should do something different than just have our recruits run around a track, do some push-ups and sit-ups, but that they should know what kind of physical agility they would need to have on the job. So that's running, that's climbing over a fence, that's going through a window, that's going like shuffling on the ground. It's identifying potential assailants, and it's pulling a very heavy, how heavy is that person? 180-pound person, so many feet across the ground, and then coming to a conclusion in which they are pulling a trigger on a fake gun. So all of these things are part and parcel of the job. We've also begun a lot more mentorship. So if you are a recruit, you're going to get a text from a current officer. They're going to be checking in with you, because we lose people in the process, because it's a really long process from the time that you express interest to the time that you're actually sworn in and wearing a badge. This whole effort is paying off. Our applications are up. We've had over 100 applications in this recruitment cycle. And we are going to have 10 new recruits going to the academy in just a couple of weeks. And I will have the honor of swearing in the largest class of officers in more than 2 decades on January 5th, which will be my last day in office. So I think it's very a sweet end to my time as mayor, because we have been trying to do a lot of different things related to recruitment, and I think we finally have hit a spot where it's actually working, and we are getting a lot of inquiries from other police agencies across the Commonwealth and the country about what we are doing. Another big focus has been on community engagement, whether it's a block party or National Night Out or in our schools with our police bureau's school resource officers. I think sometimes people forget that we have a team of school resource officers that interact with hundreds of young people on a daily basis. And they know the kids, and the kids know them. And this relationship between the school district and city police is definitely part of the way that we are proactively engaging, making sure that we're helping to get kids into some additional resources before the charges become more significant, helping to deter fights and other things that, happen on school campuses from time to time. And so those relationships between community and police are really important, and we recognize that this is trust building, and we have to lean into that in a lot of different ways. I am now going to turn this over to Chief Richard Mendez, and I just want to tell you, some of you may have already heard this before, but when I was on City Council, one of the things that I did was a ride-along with a police officer. And you're always going to get the officer that they have deemed acceptable to be in the car with a city council member that's not going to do anything stupid or say something dumb or whatever. And it was Ricky Mendez. And so that was the first time that I met Chief Mendez, was in that ride-along. And that is how I got to know him and his story about growing up in the city, graduating from J.P. McCaskey. And I would have never predicted, and I don't think he would have either, that at that time that I would be the mayor and he would be the chief someday. But I'm really glad that we have had this crossing of paths. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Mendez.
All right, thanks for having me again. I was here, it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it was probably 3 years maybe at this point, so time flies. So I was asked to talk about accreditation a little bit. I'm sure you've all heard nonstop about it because we're pretty proud of it. But like was said, on April 24th of this year, we became officially accredited. The work didn't just start on that day. I can tell you we've in the agency, I think for 20 years we've talked about it, and it's been discussed we're going to, and then it just kind of died and then would come back, and then new leaders would come in and we're going to do it, and then it would die. So I think back in 21, I was a new patrol captain, and we had talked about it again. It started off, kind of died a little bit, and then in May of 22, took interim chief, and it was brought up again. The mayor wanted it done, and as I tell her often, if my boss tells me he or she wants something done, we're going to do it. So we really focused on it, and he's not here today. He's actually out of town. We were hoping to have him here, but Lieutenant Reich, we assigned him with the accreditation. He's the accreditation manager, and without him, I don't think it would have happened as quick as it did. He, again, is someone that if you ask or tell to do something, that's all he talks about, and that's all he does. And I joke about it a little bit. When we were going through this process, and I'll get into it a little bit, but yeah, I'd work all week. It'd be a Friday at 8 p.m. I just want to unwind, and I'll get a text message from Lieutenant Reich. Are you available? So part of his job is internal affairs and accreditation manager. So when you're, 8 o'clock on a Friday night, when your IA asks if you're available, you get all kinds of thoughts. So I would say yes, and he would call me, and he would just want to talk about a policy he's reviewing. And I would be like, Lieutenant, this could have waited till Monday. And it would happen often, and it got to the point where I picked up on it, after a few Fridays of dealing with this, and I then started asking, is this an emergency? And he would reply, yes. So I would call him, and it was not an emergency. It was to discuss more policy. So it was a long process. We made it. We're proud of that to be officially accredited. I looked at some numbers. I believe there's close to like 1,200 police agencies in Pennsylvania, and there's 189 that are accredited. So it is actually a huge accomplishment for your department, and it's the men and women that are doing the work, from our civilian employees all the way, officers, patrolmen, all the way up through the ranks. So, sometimes as the face, I get, all the recognition for it, but it's not me. It's everyone that's in the department doing that work. So why accredited? Like, why do you want to be accredited? Other than that fact that the mayor said she wanted to be accredited, there are a lot of benefits to it. It really just goes over your policies, your procedures, and how you do things. Make sure you're aligned with the best practices in policing across the country. So it kind of, holds you accountable to that. And they reviewed everything, policies, how we do things, how we're documenting things. It's a standard review of that. Rewrote some policies, tidied up some policies. And again, I'll go back to it's the best practices for policing right now. And those change, and the standards change. So, every year we have to keep getting new policies. They just sent a new one, I think it was like with recruitment or something. So now we have to make sure we're going to meet their standards for that policy. And then every 3 years we'll get evaluated, and hopefully we continue to be accredited. So the process was long. Again, it starts with a simple review of everything right now, how we're doing things. When they first come in, it's like a mock assessment. They look at everything, and I'll say this, they were pretty pleased with our department, with how we looked when they first came in. But again, they review it, they make suggestions, they make sure we're meeting these standards that they have. And I think there's like 130 standards, and then subset standards of those. So it's more like, 400 or 500 maybe. So there's a lot of standards that we're meeting. And this goes from everything just to, how we're doing the job, but also how we're documenting the job. So our report writing has to be to their standards. Signage in the building. They came and toured our building, and they wanted to make sure all our signs met all the standards that they had. I'll tell, I like to make fun of Reich again, but he's a really great lieutenant. But, every time before they would come in and do an assessment, he would walk the entire building and yell at people if it wasn't clean, if there was, a lot of it is like tracking. So if somebody was at their desk and they had they got back from lunch and put $2 change down on their desk, he would not be happy with that because there's money laying around that's not documented. So it was, he drove some people nuts, but he did a great job. Getting some of the, the benefits of it, improves law enforcement community relations. It really does. It has a guideline on, things you should be doing and how you handle that. Decreases liability for insurance expenditures. So, insurance companies like to know you're accredited police agency and you're doing everything you should be doing. Again, it reduces the risk for lawsuits, and it extends agency accountability, and that's a big one. There's things we have to do now that we were doing, but now we have to show that we're doing them. And I think the one I use, the easiest one, is body camera reviews. So we have to do spot checks on body camera reviews, so many that are just random searches. And we had supervisors doing that, but now we have to document it, and we have to show that we're doing that. So when they come in and they look, we have to show, yep, here's the log of all the random body camera reviews we looked at. And then processes with how we're dealing with internal affairs, complaints, and issues like that. So, and it also encourages problem-solving activities within the agency. As we were going through this process, there were some things that, we weren't doing the way they wanted it done. So we had to, I think the one, how we stored evidence for vehicles. It's been tricky, but we were able to come up to a resolution with that to meet the standards. So that's really it. It's It's an honor to, be accredited to bring this. A lot of it, she doesn't like to take the credit, but a lot goes to her for being the driving force for this. And then as well, the, men and women that are working. So I think we're going to have questions at the end, but that's pretty much accreditation in a nutshell. So thanks. And I believe the social workers are coming up.
I think this is low enough for you. Okay. Is that okay? That's good. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Kelly and I are always very pleased to talk about police social work. There's still a lot of people out there that aren't aware about police social work, so any opportunity we have to let there be awareness of it makes us really happy. If you're not aware, Lancaster City Bureau of Police is the first police department in all of Lancaster County to have embedded social workers. I believe, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 29 police departments, including PSP, maybe? 26?
It sounds about.
Okay. Yeah, so we definitely believe that, and hope that other police departments will eventually jump on board. Most people that I've spoken to, they think that police social work is a new concept, but it actually started in the 1900s when police women with a social work education provided social services primarily to women and children. It was Alice Stebbins Wells. She was the first American woman to become an officer at the Los Angeles Police Department. She advocated for women in policing, which led to the civil service position of policewoman. By 1915, urban police departments like Chicago and Detroit followed suit, hiring policewomen who, again, provided social services focused on prevention and referral, which is a lot of what Kelly and I are already doing. But unfortunately, in the 1950s, due to political shifts, sexism, and role strain, there was a decline in police social work. The federal funding was lost. But fast forward to the 21st century, and thanks to former Captain Sonia Stebbins, she attended a training at Northwestern University, which to my knowledge is required by command staff. And she had to come up with a project to implement at her department. And so she researched police social work, interviewed other police departments nationwide, and then pulled data from our database just to see what calls social workers would be able to assist on and help reduce the call volume for officers. So when she came back, she submitted the proposal to the chief at the time, and luckily Mayor Danene Sorace approved that, and the first social worker was hired in the fall of 2019. People saw that the work that the social worker was doing was a benefit to the community and the Bureau, so a second position was added in January of 2021. And Kelly is going to talk about our function and our role, and then we'll give some examples.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly. I was thinking when the mayor was talking about the agility test, I'm so thankful as social workers we did not have to do that. So I'm just going to share a little bit about what Grace and I do. So basically, to sum it up, police social work, our role is to provide short-term crisis support. We identify what the immediate need is and then connect the individual to the service that fits that. So our work is generated through 3 different referrals. We get referrals from officers. We get walk-ins to the police station. People can make appointments with us. And then we also partner with community agencies. So those are kind of the 3 ways, and I'll break down each of them. So the main way that we get referrals is through officers. And what that looks like is providing on-scene support or getting follow-ups. So Grace and I carry a radio. We also have access to our CAD system, and that just shows all of the 911 calls. So what happens, we can self-dispatch ourselves on scene. So that actually happened earlier, right before we came here. Grace is going to talk more about it. But we heard a call that is something that we could have supported with, and we self-dispatch ourselves and go out. We also have officers that will call us out on scene. So if there's a mental health crisis or, there's an incident where they identify that we could be helpful, they can call us over the radio and we'll go out. It's important to note that we are not first responders, so we can't ever go out unless an officer is there first, just to make sure the scene is safe. And then if everything is fine, usually they'll leave, and then Grace and I remain. There are things that are put in place to make sure we are safe. Like I said, we have the radios, so they always know where we're at. They'll often drive by to make sure we're okay if we've been there for a little bit. So that's how we do on-scene support. And then we also get follow-ups from the officers. So if there's a call and it's not urgent, or maybe we're not available, they'll send us a follow-up, and Grace and I usually will connect with the person via telephone and maybe schedule something in person with them, or we can handle it over the phone depending on what it is. And then we also get walk-ins or scheduled appointments. So people will come into the police station requesting for a social worker. I would say a lot of times that's going to be working with people that are struggling with their mental health or have recently become homeless, and we help, connect them to the resources in the city. And then the third way we get connected with people is through community partners. So we could not do our work if it wasn't for the relationships we have with other community agencies. So we'll often partner with crisis intervention, children and youth, Office of Aging. We work with a lot of the same people, so it's important that we collaborate together to provide the best care for the individuals. Other responsibilities that we have, Grace and I are really lucky to be able to attend trainings so we can, learn what the best practices are and then bring it back to the department. Going with that, we also provide trainings for the officers. We have one coming up in August, and that basically, we're talking about mental health, signs and symptoms, de-escalation strategies. We also like to get input from the officers. We want them to get something out of it, so we'll ask, what they're interested in learning. We also are in a bunch of meetings. As I said, we cannot operate without the relationships we have. So a meeting that we are in, one of them is our Homeless Coalition meeting, where a bunch of different resources in the county come together, and we're talking about the current homeless crisis and, how we can come together in that area. And then we also are making sure that we're up to date with resources in the community. So a good example of that is the new Crisis Walk-in Center at LGH. We were part of the meetings before it opened, just so we had a clear understanding of what services they provided, and then we made sure to pass that information on to the officers so they know that they can give out that resource. And then just to kind of go over the impact that police social work has, we are limiting the call volume for services that are non-criminal in nature. I think some of the numbers kind of show that as well. We're here to strengthen relationships with the community. And then we also are connecting people to services that without Grace and I, they might not be connected with because there wouldn't be a police social worker. This is a chart that shows our numbers for 2024. So we were involved in 462 total incidents. Our number one referral is always mental health since the program started. That was almost 50% for last year. And then second is homelessness. And then aging and child behavioral over the years sometimes flip, but aging was third last year, and then child behavioral. And then you can see other things that we were involved in. Something that we started last year was car seat installs. So I actually will be certified in 2 weeks, but Grace has been certified. So if there is a low-income family, we can get sent a referral and provide them with a car seat. And then we can also do car seat checks at station to make sure that the car seats are safe.
Amen.
And Grace is going to give an example of an incident that we worked on.
Yeah, so this just happened right before we had to get here, and we were deciding, do we go or do we let the officer handle it? But we were like, whatever, let's go in our heels. So the call came in. It was a community member that called saying that there was an autistic male with a sign in the corner panhandling. So we went out, officer arrived before we did, let him do his little spiel about identifying information. And then Kelly and I introduced ourselves, and we found out that he was recently unsuccessfully discharged from a treatment facility. He's not from the area, and he needed assistance with finding shelter. So we took him to Tenfold. They have a day center that They have another program in there running. It's called Anchor Lancaster. They can have a cot in there where they can like rest. There's some food there. And so we dropped him off there and we told them that we would be back so that we can properly assess him and then determine to see like what his needs are and refer him to the appropriate resource.
And then recently we also started working with Blueprints. So because there has been an uptick in drug overdoses downtown, we've partnered with them. They have certified recovery specialists who have lived experience with substance abuse. So we go out with them twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to a lot of the parks like Colleton, Binns, Ewell, where there's, frequent activity, and we are connecting with the individuals there and offering any support like treatment or other resources in the community.
And really, I just wanted to thank the Bureau and Mayor Danene Sorace for their innovative thinking and really just accepting social work and that it really can make an impact in our community. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here today. And we hope that the work continues. Thank you.
So I'm just going to wrap up with just a couple more comments. Historically, in the city of Lancaster, we've really struggled over time to fully integrate the police bureau into the operations of the city. And for a long time, it was kind of considered that the bureau was an island unto itself. And we've really been working, and this really was part of Mayor Gray's efforts as well, but just trying to chip away at that in integrating around our HR policies, integrating around our communications, integrating with Department of Public Works and Fire, and also through the Department of Neighborhood Engagement. And I'm really proud to say that, there's really been a shift over time in which we now have solid working relationships across all of our departments with the Police Bureau, and that just makes everything better. And also just some personal reflections for me as mayor coming into this. I'll just say that, I'm going to really work hard that for whoever is the next mayor, that they really understand and are clear about what they should know and be involved in related to the Police Bureau and its people. And I would just say that this was the area that I was the most ill-equipped for when I came into my role as mayor. And it was the one that threw me the biggest curveball, like 6 months into the job. And it started out with a very, very tragic officer suicide. Mark Guerin died in June of 2018. That was really painful. I went to his funeral on my daughter's birthday. 2 days after, there was a tasing incident between one of our officers and Sean Williams on the street. I think that was on Prince Street, I think. That was like we were getting calls from around the world about that incident. And it was just a really intense time of the pain inside the Bureau of losing one of their colleagues to suicide, with this incredible outrage that was happening externally related to this tasing incident. And that set me on a course that I never, ever expected in terms of digging in around our use of force policy, the rollout of our body cameras, all of the just the ebb and flow of people, because we've had so many retirements. And also, this is my third chief, and that was also like a really difficult, painful, growing experience. But I think that while every department and bureau has really evolved during my time as mayor, because I think the Police Bureau was the absolute hardest, most challenging, frustrating, and painful, is also the sweetest. Because I can now say, because, you've heard just 3 people today talk about the work that has been done in the Bureau. There's a lot of other examples of that. And while it is still not perfect, we are definitely leaving the Bureau in a better place than when it was when I came here in 2018. And so with that, I want to just shift gears for a minute and then take some questions. And the shifting of gears is that this may be the last time I am before you presenting in my role as mayor. And I want to thank the Hourglass Foundation. Very early on, the Hourglass Foundation was interviewing me as a candidate for mayor. It's slightly intimidating to be sitting around the table with all of these people asking me a lot of questions, but it was really great prep for, I think, the 18 or so debates that I had when I was a candidate. They also provided foundational research related to home rule, and that was something that was extremely beneficial. Your predecessor 2 or 3 times before you provided me a 4-inch binder of financial data from cities across Pennsylvania, and that really did help encourage my thinking around the home rule process. It was not recommended, and at that time I agreed with the Hourglass Foundation that this was like not a good idea. But then as time went on, I realized it was like really the only thing that we could do to right the ship in terms of the financial sustainability of the city. Also, these First Friday forums have been an incredible way for us to share our learning and our progress as a city. You've heard me talk about all kinds of things, home rule definitely, as well as our tourism master plan. We've had the police chief come several times. We've talked about environmental issues. I mean, it runs the gamut. And so I really appreciate that the Hourglass Foundation continues to make this possible. And I just want to thank you for your partnership during my time as mayor. I am truly grateful. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
I want to take a second just to thank you all for your candid remarks and experience and bringing all of your stories and offer up some time for our audience to ask any questions. So as usual, if you want to raise your hand, I'll come around. And a reminder to those, I know we have quite a few people on our live stream today. I am checking. So if you want to submit any questions via live stream, please do. We'd like to hear your questions too.
Mayor Sorace, at a previous meeting, I raised the issue about the drug overdose problem at Binns Park and at 150 North Queen, because I'm an attorney, and one day I went into the courthouse with clients, and there were like 2 separate calls, one when we went in, one when we came out. It's not exactly. Maybe some of us should be hardened, but our clients aren't used to seeing that kind of thing going on. And whatever my comments were, your response to me was, I'm not going to say you're wrong, because I said, as long as we had that going on, we're never going to get the 300 block of North Queen Street where we wanted to be in terms of vibrant with the tourists, because of people coming up from the Marriott, and they're not going to want to pass that to get there. And your comment was, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm glad to hear that you have taken apparently mine and other comments to heart and have stepped up the things that are happening at Binns Park and across the street, because it is a problem. It's a problem that will affect the city's ability to attract visitors, and it makes the county services building extremely uninviting to people who need to use the county services building. So thank you for taking some steps to try and address the problem.
Yeah. Okay? All right. Thank you. What I would say is that we have been, it is a constant battle to address both the humanitarian crisis that is on the street from homelessness and or drug addiction and or mental health. Those things can all be it with one person, or they can be each one separate. What I would say is that we have had a very successful year fundraising, and are going to be activating Bins Park and Yule Plaza much more. If you all want to come out and plant flowers on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., you're welcome. But I think the other thing is that we have been, our selective enforcement officers have been doing an incredible job trying to root out the dealers. And there was a week, that was the beginning of March or April. I think it was March, in which there was an event that was happening downtown, and there was some additional security, and it was because of a proactive work of one of our police officers that we identified a dealer and took that person off the street. And that person was the linchpin, because for a week we did not have any overdoses. Yeah. And that is the kind of effort that has to happen, and it's hard to do. You know, they're trying to avoid us, but with enhanced efforts, and this is why the police recruitment is so important, because we do need to have more feet. People walking around our officers are a deterrent to drug dealing, but it is never going to stop. I mean, Chief can tell you he's worked here for almost 25 years, and this isn't ongoing. We are going to have to continue to work together to address, which is why it's so important that you're hearing from Grace and Kelly today as social workers who are working with blueprints, and while we're also talking about enforcement. Those things have to happen hand to hand, because we have people who are very aware of the services that are available to them related to housing, rehabilitation, mental health services, on, and they don't want them. They're refusing them. That is where we need especially enforcement to come into play. So I would just say thank you for recognizing the efforts, and they are continuous, and the resources matter. And so we've gotten a lot of private support to do more activation downtown through our Lancaster Office of Promotion, and we're continuing our enforcement efforts, and we can never stop. And I want to just give, Josh, you were going to ask me a question, or our team. I want to just give Grace and Kelly a moment. They have one other story that I would love for them to share with you all, because it really speaks to the commitment that they have, and also how long and how hard you have to work to help one person. Yeah, they're good.
Come on. There we go.
Hello.
Okay. Yes, so we received not a call, it was an appointment, right? So people can schedule appointments with us online, or they can walk in or call into the police department. So a community member scheduled an appointment with Kelly, concerned about an older adult that was sleeping outside for a number of days. So Kelly and I went out, assessed the individual, and we found out that he had been homeless for about 17 years. He did not speak any English. He was a permanent resident, but did not have his green card, which is really difficult to get services if you don't have that proper documentation. He also didn't have a Pennsylvania ID, and he had difficulty ambulating, so he wasn't able to walk to and from services to be able to do anything for himself. So it took a lot of work. We would be here for a really long time if I told you everything that we had to do, but it would not have been possible without the community partners that we work with, Office of Aging, Union Community Care, I don't know, the Food Hub. He also wasn't eligible for the shelters because he also had medical issues as well. So, unfortunately, the entire time we were working with him, I think it was over 6 months, he was sleeping outside. People would steal his belongings, and we would have to get him a sleeping bag all over again. We got him a cell phone. We weren't able to get it back. And finally, we were able to get him into a personal care home, but it took a really, really, really long time to be able to do that. And there were community members that, complained. They thought that we weren't doing enough, that it was taking too long. But people need to understand that it takes so long to get services, and that doesn't mean that those individuals aren't trying. You need to have a little bit of grace and patience and understanding the process. But, he is thriving today, and we still visit him, and he love him. He's one of our favorites. So it's something that we are really, really proud of.
Danene, thank you for today's presentation, all the rest of the ones you've had since you were mayor. You will be missed. And direct this question primarily towards Chief Mendez, but the rest of the panel. I don't know of any other police departments that have on-staff social workers, and so there's obviously not a blueprint for the model. I'm curious how the process of integrating with the rest of the team went, and whether it was, I don't know, has the culture around the department had to change to align with the work, or has this all been very smooth? Has there been any unexpected benefits to having social workers on staff? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've actually both could from both sides of it. I think, law enforcement is a tight-knit, family, closed group. So anytime there's an outsider that comes in, it takes some time for adjusting. And I think they probably feel the same way coming in. And I'll say this in general, not necessarily them, but anytime we get like a comms person or a new social worker, it's like this weird, like they don't like you, you don't know if you like them, it's back and forth, But what I've learned is once people get to know police officers, I think they all pretty much have a fun time and enjoy it there. So, and then the same thing, I know there's officers constantly down there talking to them, but I'll let them talk a little bit about that.
So I started in 2021, and I was hired to work 2 to 10 p.m. We no longer have that shift because based on numbers and call volume, we identified that was no longer needed. But when I first started, there had already been a social worker there in 2019, but they were primarily day shift. So night shift wasn't used to having a social worker. So I'd say it took some time to build trust. I think there were some that were very open to me, but there were others that wouldn't even talk to me, wouldn't acknowledge me, and they wouldn't use me. And that was fine, because if somebody else did, I knew that they would pass the word along to somebody else. And eventually they would be like, oh, well, Grace can handle that. So then it's one less incident for them to respond to. I want to say it took about a little over 6 months for me to feel like I had a good rapport, and over time it really has just grown. I'm a little bit jealous of Kelly sometimes, but even so, even being new, they still want to get to know you. Can they trust you? So do you have an impact?
I was just going to add too. So I started a little over a year ago. So I was really lucky. Like Grace said, the rapport has already been established with how police social work can be helpful. So I feel like it was a little bit more welcoming for me, but I definitely went through that learning period with the officers. Something that has helped that we're doing more of is riding along with officers. And that's a great opportunity to just get to know each other. We informally kind of learn more about each other's roles during that process too. So learning more about the social work world, I learned more about tactical things. So that's a good opportunity as well to improve that relationship.
And I'd like to add to that by saying leading change in an organization is really hard. And if you've done that, you know what that is. We're talking about leading change in we are a 600 people operation. The police bureau is the largest number of staff that we employ. They are not really excited about change. And so it's definitely a process of bringing them along. But I do think that the work speaks for itself. And so our officers, as I would go and talk to officers during lineups and ask them about how things are going, are they using this, using the police social work? What has their experience been? It definitely was clear that there were officers that were more reliant or using the police social workers than other officers. I think over time that has evened out, which is something that we wanted to see. And then I'll just say another example of that is our language access line. And so what we have now, actually in a few weeks, the Police Bureau will be recognized at City Council for being having the most call volume with Proprio, which is our language access line. And the languages, yes, you would guess Spanish, but would you guess Swahili? Would you guess what is the Burmese? Yes. And then there's a few others that I have to go back to the list to look at to be able to remember. But these are languages that when you're a police officer and you're trying to interact with a resident and you don't have common language, whether they're a victim of a crime or they're reporting, something else or whatever, that Proprio line is like a lifeline to public safety. And the fact that our police officers are using it more than anyone else in the city is really reassuring. And that was also something that was new because we had to it's easy. You just put the app on your phone. This is how it works. Everybody gets a little card. And that our patrol officers are using it and our detectives are especially using it, which is a really good sign.
Good afternoon. I'm curious to learn a little bit about your de-escalation techniques or training, and also how the police officers and social workers kind of tag team, especially challenging mental health situations.
So our officers have to take a training every year. And then when Grace and I are doing trainings, we did one a few months ago, they prefer to learn through watching body cam. So we will find an example, either if it's their own body cam or something online, and then kind of go over what happened and how the situation could have gone differently. So that's just an example of how we are working with the officers to do that.
Yeah, as far as de-escalation, we went through a course for Force Science, which is they have scientists on their boards and consultants and police officers. So we sent a group of a few officers, our trainers, to train that so they could come back and train the department. We've done, so we have that yearly training that's required. The MOPEC, which is the commissioning agency for police officers in the county, they require it for their updates. It's continued. All of our officers have went through trauma-informed training. We partnered with some local, I believe it was LGH that partnered with us to do that. CIT training as well. Our officers have been through as well. So, what's that? Crisis intervention training. Yeah, it's crisis intervention training. So it's how you deal with people in crisis, and it's another example. So when you hear de-escalation a lot, I can tell you this, your officers in Lancaster City have gone through a lot of different courses on that. So they are out there de-escalating. And it's, sometimes it's not just talking, sometimes it's distancing. There's many avenues of de-escalation that may not be visible to everybody that you might see.
I think we have time for a small question. Okay. Questionita.
Thank you. You guys, congratulations. What an amazing team. What an amazing accomplishment. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves on top of all the stories you guys shared. So that's tremendous work. And here's a bit of a softball question. I know it was an economic decision, but the horses, you guys got rid of the horses. I had the unique experience of seeing them in action, breaking up a crowd, and it was impressive. I'm just curious if there's any impacts or is that a tool that's missed from the department?
That was not a softball question. but I'll try and answer it. And I'll just be as honest, as real as I can. It was great. It was a part of history in Lancaster City that we were able to keep for a very long time. But policing has changed, time has changed, staffing has changed. As we've talked about a lot, we're down to 97 officers right now. And it just wasn't feasible to continue that. So there was questions that were made. I know with, the Lancaster Police Foundation, which has been tremendous support for us. But when we were looking forward to the future, could we guarantee we were always going to be able to staff it? And the answer was no, I could not guarantee that. So we made the tough decision. And, we put a lot of thought and effort into it. But it was something that we felt needed to be done for staffing and for the future. And again, with that, like policing's changed, we have drones now that we can use that have been beneficial for. I often say, as a child at the parades, there used to be a lot of parades in the city. I remember the horses and the motorcycles that the city had. It was something I appreciate that. It's in my heart to this day, but we had to make the tough decisions at the time. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge and thank our speakers again. Mayor Sorace, thank you for your willingness to always share your knowledge and experience with us. It's been great working with you in my time at the Hourglass. Chief Mendez, Grace, Kelly, thank you so much for coming and sharing your perspective. And to our audience, too, for always showing up with so much curiosity, bringing friends along with you. Really appreciate that. A video of this will be posted next week to our YouTube and our website. We encourage you to share these with folks who maybe aren't Hourglass members, but you think would be curious and want to join the group. And also want to let you know that the Hourglass takes our annual hiatus in July, so we won't have a forum in July. We'll see you guys again in August. We'll be hearing from the Chamber talking about some of their workforce continuum initiatives and a new initiative called Land and Lank. So definitely not one to miss. And please bring friends, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a great weekend.